History is fascinating. We never run out of good, juicy material for stories. There are so many possibilities in interpreting and presenting the human drama, tragedy, comedy, the mundane, the extraordinary. A bunch of things are probably interesting, but let's be honest, we are most interested in ourselves, for good reasons. We can smarten up if we know what people thought and did and how it worked out for them. The eclipse of the crescent moon describes the heroic defense of the castle of Eger that was under siege by Suleiman the Magnificent's 200,000 strong war machine. The Hungarian defenders were outnumbered 17-1. As I was reading about the waves of attacks, my imagination got going. I popped up on the rampart, exactly where the Turks breached the wall, exactly where I was needed the most, and with my shiny black machine gun, I mowed them down. Now, I didn't think of changing history, I just wanted to help the good side. And I have the feeling that many of my classmates felt the same way. I took Philosophy 101 at the University of Waterloo, and in an essay, my mind got going again. Pearl Harbor radar operators noticed the incoming Zeros, but duty officer Lieutenant Kermit Tyler dismissed the warning and suggested that it was probably a formation of B-17s. We know the consequences. Now, here's a sequence of what-ifs. What if, at this watershed moment, Lieutenant Tyler looks into the matter and sounds the alarm? The defenders blunt the Japanese attack, the US gains the upper hand in the Pacific sooner, and D-Day happens a year earlier in 1943. Then, Eastern Europe is liberated by the Americans and the Brits. Stalin is confined to a smaller empire, and the Cold War gets downscaled. This drastically changes my family's history and my own. I don't have to run for my life, become a refugee, and start a new life in Canada. Then I wouldn't be sitting here making this video. Could it have happened this way? Definitely maybe. Again, I have the feeling that I'm not alone, and many people have thought about the possible alternatives to historical events. The term butterfly effect was first used in a short story, A Sound of Thunder. A time traveler steps on a butterfly, and this small alteration to the distant past snowballs into dramatic changes in history. How about the other way around? A future catastrophe is averted by changing the past, which happens to be our present.
So what's the deal?
My mission is to protect you.
Yeah? Who sent you?
You did. 35 years from now, you reprogrammed me to be your protector here, in this time.
This is deep.
Armchair philosophers analyze and poke holes in the plots of dystopian movies. How much control do we have over our destiny? This stuff really gets people thinking. And it's not just novels, science fiction movies, and comic books. The same goes for video games that reach millions and millions of kids. Wormhole fantasies popping up in alternate universes, time travel, using futuristic technologies against medieval monsters. This genre is huge. We tend to think that historical facts don't change, but there are new discoveries and new details emerge. Our culture changes. We have new conceptual tools at our disposal. Our interests change. Historians imaginatively reinterpret the past because it is always written wrong. We want history to be meaningful to us in the present. A photographic camera reproduces indiscriminately what comes through its lens. The historian is more like a painter who captures the nature of his subject and conveys an idea. So here is Lenin, the aggressive-driven maniac. And here is an artist's rendition. Oh, and this is my favorite. Now, more often than not, this serves a particular purpose. We do not have certainty about the past, but does it mean that anything goes and we are free to interpret things to suit our agenda? A multitude of frameworks of historiography is interesting to look at. Mostly it's like, yeah, I see the point, but it doesn't explain this, this, and this. Here's a list of them. History is cyclical and repeats itself endlessly. This is the Hindu reincarnation business. History is determined by climate, soil, and geography. Race or heredity is what keeps things moving. Sex drive and death wish are behind everything, holds the Freudian view. My favorite one is the Marxist idea that history is about class struggle. Leadership and genius are everything. The history of the world is but the biography of great men. Some argue that people control their history in their desire to achieve progress. The Christian view of history is about the great drama of sin and redemption. Organismic theories see society as a living organism, and things change according to a spirit of the age. Zeitgeist is the word. Too many choices to consider. If I just want to have a common sense understanding of how history works, what's a reasonable path to follow? So, what is it that I know? These are my beloved geese. Their design is perfect, for a good reason. Nature doesn't tolerate mistakes and gets rid of things that don't work. This is the rule. Consider sailing. Many variables are at play. The wind, the waves, the many ways to adjust the rigging, and so on. There are no 2 days of sailing where you can replicate what you did the day before. However, what causes what can be established, and I can teach you how to sail. People do random and unpredictable things, but psychologists are not just poking around in the dark. Human behavior patterns can be figured out, and we know from math that patterns follow rules. How about the collective wisdom of the people that is based on solid observations over a long period of time? For example, what goes up must come down. Crazy ideas cannot be sustained and always fall apart. Good is more powerful than evil. Looking at history, we find 2 extreme views. One says history follows a teleological pattern, which means it marches towards a purpose, a final outcome. I'm intimately familiar with the myth of historical inevitability. The other extreme is that history shows no patterns. It kind of unfolds randomly, and the future is a blank slate. In between these 2 views, there's a view that makes a lot of sense to me. A huge aha experience for me was John Glubb's Fate of Empires. So here's the gist of it. An early empire fights hard to establish itself, expands, starts trading like there's no tomorrow, and gets rich. Once comfortably affluent, the age of intellect is ushered in, and life gets very refined. Then comes the age of decadence, social decay, and collapse. Author Michael Hopf nails it. Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. Benedict Beckold uses a visual analogy of a helix. Historical cycles repeat, but each time a level higher. So what is it that we live now? And where are we on the helical spiral? British philosopher and writer Roger Scruton defines oikophobia as the hatred of our own customs, culture, and institutions. Oikophobia is a sort of pathology that happened many times in history in societies that were in the declining phase of their development. In each of these examples, the same reasons cause the same symptoms and always lead to the same consequences. The dominoes fall. Even the otherwise atheist Benedict Beckold accepts that religion is the strongest communal force that exists because it focuses on the sacred. When religion diminishes, the vacuum that it leaves is not filled with reason. Religion is substituted with crazy stuff and alternative forms of worship. And these are the consequences. Mass atheism and nihilism, weakening social cohesion, moral relativism, androgyny and effeminacy, exaggerated egalitarianism, extreme individualism and intellectual fads, weakened patriotism, and an inability to resist outside threats. Historical illiteracy and the scourge of wokism are cosy bedfellows. It is time for us to get to know history and smarten up. And the maxim inscribed at the entrance to the Oracle of Delphi, Nothise auton, know yourself, is still dead on.